Yeah, I don't know if we want to touch on the Epstein stuff at all. I mean, there's really nothing terribly new, right? We kind of knew that if Clinton was wrapped up in this, the stuff that's more definitive about him absolutely, being, according to the testimony, him being on the island, in the, him and Epstein with like two young women or young girls present, essentially, orgies, which essentially we're talking rape, were constantly happening. So it's not like it's not like he could not know what was happening there. And the only twist I would want to add to it is that at some point there was video released from Amy Robach. Do you guys remember that, the ABC News correspondent, where she said they had definitive proof against Epstein and they had Clinton, she said, but the ABC News squelched it, right? They put it down. And my question is, like, right now, why isn't somebody demanding to see that evidence as part of Maxwell's prosecution? And why aren't they demanding that these people testify? They're saying they had conclusive evidence. They have it supposedly somewhere still filed away, right? It was a report that wasn't presented, but that information must exist. And Amy Robach, if nothing else, must know that information. And I just don't understand why the victims' lawyers aren't reaching out, or, is there a non-disclosure thing for did Amy Robach have to sign something after they came out? But it seems like they should be compelled to bring this evidence forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it seems kind of half-assed to me, the whole approach, like they're investigating this, but it's kind of like reluctantly, at the FBI and Department of Justice and everything. Because it's like, it's a two-way street, right?
I don't know. I think they actually are investigating it more than people have been giving them credit for. I mean, not fully, obviously, because they all have their ties. Like, Bill Barr has his ties with his dad being the one who gave Epstein the job over at, what was it?
The
Harvard?
Dalton School. The Dalton School.
Okay. Yeah.
In New York.
Yeah, the Dalton School. Yeah. So, they're all mixed in all of this stuff. So I was hoping that there was going to be more information other than what we kind of already knew or kind of already suspected, because I feel like any of this stuff with Bill Clinton, I feel like if anything, it's just more of a cementing of the fact that he was there. It's just more evidentiary, but ultimately it's not really revealing anything new. And I remember the whole week leading up to this, they had been almost like teasing it, who are the names that are going to be exposed? And I mean, I haven't watched a lot of this stuff. I haven't read into anything. I'm sure that you guys are more adept into what's going on, but I haven't heard of any new names coming out there that would, make anybody nervous.
They definitely oversold this, because it was like, we're going to get all this testimony about all these names. And then, like, when it finally comes out, they said, oh, but the names are redacted. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And, but I heard something online where people were saying that people they're able to get around the redactions somehow. And I'd have to go research that to see if people have got really good ideas of who the names are that are there. But
and that's always the issue, right? Whenever we use the FISA courts to get any sort of information, it's always highly redacted or heavily redacted. So you really don't. So whatever information it is that we do have, that's why I always tell people that, the atrocities that we know about that are going on, this is only what they let us know about. So because a lot of the information that's out there is heavily redacted. So I can't even imagine the kind of stuff that actually is going on. But I feel like, the fact that you had the issue with the judge, that her son was killed, that's nuts. Which case I'm talking about. But this had to do with the Deutsche Bank case, right? That she was assigned to the case, and then somebody put a hit on her, I guess. But it's interesting because it's like, obviously it was sending a message. If they killed, because it's supposedly the whole thing with that is that she had tried a case, I think like maybe a year ago or something, or 2 years ago, and that person was, there was something wrong with them mentally, and that they were holding a grudge against her. And but if the grudge is against her, why would they kill her son and shoot her husband?
Well, they came to the door and she was downstairs. So, I mean, but
Yeah.
it was like the way it was portrayed in the media was this guy was just a lone wolf, crazy, anti-feminist, men's rights kind of
Yeah.
guy who did this. But do you think there's something like it goes deeper than that? Do you think that was kind of a cover story?
I've told you I don't believe in coincidences. I feel like, and especially we know how heavily infiltrated the CIA and the FBI, all these people, all these intelligence agencies, how infiltrated they are in our media. And the media has proven time and time again that they are just stenographers for these intelligence agencies. So whatever it is that they tell them is what they go with. Half the time, honestly, and I could, again, this could be just my conspiracy side of things, that whenever I see that anything is blamed on anyone, I always question it. I never believe it outright. I don't care how much evidence you say you have, because how many people do we have behind bars that unfortunately, because they didn't have enough money the way that like Ghislaine has or the Epstein had, that they're not able to fight these charges. And most of the time, what do? They end up pleading guilty and they lose their lives over it. There's so many people that are behind bars specifically for that reason. And a lot of the times, these police agencies, the reason why they push so much for this is because they just need to have that is the whole point, right? It's because they don't want to have, like, how are you, like, let's say it's like a gun violence victim, how are you going to tell the family that you don't know who killed them or whatever? Obviously it's just easier if you have at least some poor person who doesn't have the wherewithal to be able to fight for themselves. They're the ones who end up getting the shit end of the stick.
Well, yeah, and for political reasons and for career advancement reasons, like Kamala had these kind of situations where basically it seemed that she kind of suppressed evidence, didn't let a person on death row take a DNA test when there was like evidence that he didn't do it and all that kind of stuff, and in order to further careers, right? Well, basically, when DNA testing came out, there were a whole bunch of cops that ended up in hot water because all these things came out that they framed somebody because they just wanted to, like you say, either just put an end to the case, put a seal on the case, make a family feel better that they caught that maybe that's putting the best light on it, right? Or
they
career
need justice,
or
justice needs to be served.
The numbers need to look good, right?
And it was a DA, it's not the cops.
And career advancement is based on it. Well, it probably goes up and down the chain, right? Everybody wants to see that the numbers look good, right?
Yeah, you got to think of it as if the cops are funded by the city, that's not a very good investment if you're not solving cases. If you know what I'm saying? That if you don't have a good track record, well, then why are we giving you more funding, or why are we funding you to the tune that we're funding you in a lot of these places? Like, I mean, think about like Chicago. Think about how many unsolved murders go on in Chicago every single day. Still, even with this pandemic going on, it's still, the numbers are intensely crazy. And the police there are just, even with all the money that they're given, like, it's still not enough for them to be able to actually fight crime.
Yeah, and there's always a list of people that the cops, in cities anyway, that the cops like, well, we didn't catch him on this, but we know he's up to something, There's always these people that they're happy to pin crimes on, just because, they don't like them, they got a grudge against them, or, they think they're
famous gangster? Oh my God.
Whitey Bulger.
Al Capone, that they got him on like tax evasion or something, right?
Well, I'm thinking more like the FBI in Boston. Whitey Bulger, basically, all these murders were pinned on these other guys that were bad guys. I mean, they had done like robberies and stuff, but they hadn't murdered anybody, and they basically pinned the murders on them to get their informant Whitey Bulger, who was like a horrible gangster, off.
Well, even in Chicago, I was actually watching a story the other day that they were talking about that for under Rahm Emanuel, whoever was the police chief, they were actually like they were essentially a gang. They were literally pinning stuff on people. They were putting so many people behind bar. Planting shit on them, arresting them for nothing, just going up to people's houses, robbing them, like doing all these things they're supposed to be fighting against, or yeah, it's crazy, and then it's gone on for so long, and obviously this is what we know.
Right.
So think about all of those innocent people who went to jail again, who have their lives ruined. I think that one of the worst things in the world that could happen to you is when you become part of the criminal justice system. When you are inside the system, your life is, in most cases, it's over.
Right. Right.
What
Yeah.
was Matt
Yeah.
Taibbi's book? It came out about 10 years ago. I'm just looking for the name of it. About the justice system and how there's basically two systems of justice. You know, there's one for the elite and there's one for, you know, or not even so much the elite, but I mean the, you know, wealthier people,
Yeah, if
upper middle
you
class.
have money, then you
Yeah, you can afford
like
an
think
attorney and everything.
about Alan Dershowitz, the fact that he's regarded as this excellent lawyer, even though he's helped out people that are a little questionable, maybe
Right.
Matt
not on the
Taibbi's
good
book.
side, maybe he got away with stuff that other people wouldn't have gotten away with. But the only reason why they were able to evade any sort of incarceration was because of the fact that they were able to pay for someone like Alan Dershowitz, who is he's a master debater essentially.
Well, that's right back to Epstein. Basically, the FBI and folks had all the dirt they need to put that guy away for child rape back in the 90s, and he, flourished through a couple of years ago.
And it's
And
not just having
think about Virginia Giuffre. She was sued by Ghislaine Maxwell and by Alan Dershowitz. For what is that when you go against someone's
Defamation.
character?
Defamation.
Defamation.
Yeah.
Character defamation.
Yeah.
So it goes to show you that, and think about like all these other victims who they didn't have enough money to go and get like these fancy lawyers. Like
Right.
some of the lawyers we have seen, they've stuck with these victims, which is amazing. But for the most part, that's not the case. In general.
Yeah. And obviously the whole point was to deny the thousands of girls justice, but basically like making a show of Virginia Giuffre. It's basically, if you surface yourself, we're going to destroy you.
Right.
We have limitless supply of dollars to fight you in court, and we'll destroy you financially immediately.
Well, how many too were actually killed? I mean, we don't even know that. That's the ones who can't speak. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
The Netflix documentary insinuates that basically the woman that was like a secretary, like right in the front, essentially a secretary, says the number of girls I saw coming and going, they had to have been killed.
So this is the judicial. This is the
Yeah.
divide that Matt Taibbi talks about. His book is called The Divide. Like the elite can commit these egregious, horrible crimes, right, and they get away with it. Or whether it's or financial crimes, for example, if you're laundering drug money and you're a bank, that's okay. You can get away with that. No one gets put in prison. But if you steal, water from a Walmart during, like Hurricane Katrina, you get shot, right, or you get arrested. Matt Taibbi gives the example of in I don't know what city it was, Chicago or one of these cities where the cops just go around looking for people like 3 a.m. If you're standing on the street, like a guy was standing on the street in front of his apartment, they arrested him for obstructing pedestrian traffic. They just,
oh my God.
Okay, so they just picked up somebody, and then and they said, and then his court-appointed attorney said, "Well, just plead guilty, pay the $35, and you'll get off." And the guy said, "No, I'm not going to do that." He said, "Well, you're just making it really difficult for yourself." But that's what they do. And so the cops get their numbers, right, that they have so many arrests or whatever, but they'll actually create situation. I mean, and this is not to speak of the absolute corrupt cops who will plant drugs on you or something to get that drug arrest, but just driving around and saying like, you're standing on a sidewalk, we're going to arrest you for obstructing pedestrian traffic. Now, they're not going to do that in Scarsdale, right?
Right, exactly.
They're going to do that in some poor neighborhood.
Yes.
And the guy had just come home from work, because he's working second shift or whatever. So he got home at like 2:00 in the morning, and he's standing out in front of his, and he gets arrested. So, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
Or think about the fact that people are like, well, first of all, that divide exists in so many facets. But first, I wanted to say that think about that. You know, she is somebody who is considered so powerful and so rich that whatever happens, no one's gonna believe. Like if she all of a sudden commits suicide or whatever, no one's gonna believe that she committed suicide. You know, they're all gonna think that it's some sort of cabal. That, you know what I'm saying? Like it's something so much bigger. You know, like
I don't know. I think people believe it. I think a lot of people will believe it. The media will tell them that, and they'll believe it. Especially my, wealthier friends, they're going to believe it. I'm sorry, but they will believe it.
But then the other thing that I was going to say was that that divide that exists between like the rich or the elite or the powerful, whatever, and the poor or the less than or whatever is. It's evident in even with the package, the package. The fact that it was big corporations that were bailed out, and then it's the small businesses and the everyday person that are left to figure shit out for months on end. It's or even like the fact that we have to have like what you guys were talking about, the FANG, supposedly the FANG stocks. That's what it is. It's like Facebook, Apple, all these big tech companies. We wouldn't allow for a small business to have this monopoly, but they have become so entrenched in our economy, like so vital to it, almost like going back to the whole imperialism thing, that it's become so vital to our economy that we cannot, like, it's detrimental to us shutting them down. That is how crazy upside, like topsy-turvy it is, that the elite have us, that we need to sustain them. We cannot let them fail.
Wasn't it Eric Holder? Eric Holder said this, or somebody in the Obama Justice Department said, when it comes down to it, we can't go after some of these companies because to do so would create economic disruption. So basically they're saying, well, justice is selective because if we go after these companies, it's going to affect the economy. This company might go bankrupt. People are going to lose their jobs. Ergo, we can't go after these companies. So it's basically like, if you're small enough, fine, we'll go after you. But if you're too big, that's going to be too disruptive, and we're not going to go after you.
Yep. Or even think about how, like how people will, people that are protesting are being accused of being terrorists, essentially, or you have, people, the protesters that are fighting against pipelines, that they're considered environmental terrorists or economic terrorists or whatever. But the actual terrorists, the people who actually, have gone and used for, fear for political purposes, which is the actual definition of terrorism, like people like Obama, like George Bush, like Cheney, like all these fuckers, all these war criminals, they are praised by everybody.
Bush is completely, like, I was posting, I don't know if I brought this up before, that W for quite a while was Hitler Satan, right? And right now Trump is Hitler Satan. But you see now, like, W spoke at John Lewis's funeral.
Yeah.
He's, you've got pictures of Michelle Obama with her arms wrapped around him. I mean, who's to say that in 10 years Trump isn't essentially just another one of them? Except he's a populist. He's a different animal. If he was a real Republican doing everything he's doing now, then that would happen.
He's not playing by the rules, so
he's not creating wars. He's not doing everything they want.
With the whole thing, that it just goes to show that there is this disparity of how your regular person is treated versus somebody who is considered too big to fail or too big to jail or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, too big to jail.
Oh, absolutely.
Bill Clinton delivered a eulogy for John Lewis too. I mean, it was kind of ironic having, on my news feed, one story about Bill Clinton delivering the eulogy for John Lewis, how moving it was, and the other one is about his connection to the Epstein affair. And the next story.
I think I don't know if it was done consciously to give him some good stuff right before they knew this other thing was going to drop, but that was like a 1-2. Like, literally, it was like the Lewis thing happened, I think, immediately before. I thought it happened immediately before that.
Did it? Okay. Well, that would make sense.
Yeah. I think they managed the timing of that or something. I don't know. But